Hey friends! Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community that is all about doing the inner work to live an aligned and, dare I say, happy life. I'm your host, spiritual guide and intuitive, Angell Kelly, and I'm here to share my teachings along with messages passed on to me from higher consciousness. I've also got incredible guests in store to help you go down all those spiritual rabbit holes. So let's go! Welcome to the club! Hi, Spirit Club. Thanks for tuning in again. And today we are going to talk about doing hard things. And a lot of this episode is going to be a little life update from me. So if that's not something that you feel like listening to, I will not take offense. Just fast forward to the end of the episode for some chat around doing hard things, how to do it, why it's important, and all that sort of thing. But I thought I would do a little life update for those of you who care, because I have been doing a lot of hard things, and I will continue to have to do hard things for a little while here. So I'm gaining more and more expertise in this. And I would say it's something that I have always, I have always worked on and built up courage to do. So I know a bit about it. And so I've been doing a lot of hard things lately. And although I'm not going to share all of them with you right now because I'm not quite ready, I figured I should start. And I'm not trying to be mysterious. It's just that, some things haven't fully been worked out and therefore I'm not ready to be public with. So a little bit of information about me outside of this podcast. I am a geologist. And I work in the oil and gas industry here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And most of my career, I've worked in the field, which means literally out on drilling rigs that are drilling for oil. And this has had me just working in like rural parts of Alberta, nothing like really cool and exotic, just like in the middle of nowhere. Until recently, in the last 2 years, I got a job downtown. So until then, I was working in the field and I was rotating in and I was out of town probably like 70% of my life. I was out in the field. And then January 2023, which was a personal year one for me, I got a job in town, downtown Calgary, in the office as an operations geologist. What does this mean? This had me looking after 3 drilling rigs. So the rigs that I used to work on, I was looking after them. And this ultimately had me working on call 24/7, basically all year. So that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And I know you're thinking like, what do you mean on call? You're not a doctor. And no, it is not that important. However, drilling rigs, there is no, they drill 24/7. There is no weekends or working hours for drilling rigs. So, there's no difference between a Monday at 8 a.m. and a Saturday night at 2 a.m. to a drilling rig. And so it was very common that I would be working evenings after work. I would be working weekends during the day. I'd be working in the middle of the night 3 to 4 times a week. And this was my life. And it was, honestly, these past 2 years have been some of the most depleting times of my life. It's like having 3 energetic cords, because I had 2 to 3 rigs at all times, like having 3 energetic cords out at all times, monitoring what's going on, aware of what's going on. I could never just wake up on a Saturday morning and lie in bed for a bit, because at least 8 hours of drilling time has passed. So, and these rigs, they drill really, really fast. So a lot happens in a short amount of time. And so and on top of this, I was showing up at the office every day as well. So, as you can see, it was really, really depleting. And some people can do this, and those people, I'm like kudos, honestly. But for me, it really tore away at my life. My health suffered. The first year I worked this job, I was sick. Like, I can't even count how many times I was sick. I was so sick. My sleeping really suffered. Like, I stopped really knowing how to sleep. Even if the rigs didn't wake me up one night, I was still not sleeping through the night. And my friendships and family suffered. I just stopped being able to spend time seeing anyone because I had to find any kind of energy reserve I had for myself. Obviously, my spiritual work and this business suffered. I kept it going because it was so important to me. And it's like, I mean, this podcast is the love of my life, but for obvious reasons, you can see how that would be difficult. I couldn't even go to like a yoga class without making sure the rigs were okay, let them know I'm out of touch for an hour, have my watch on so they can contact me while I'm in the class. And that's just the nature of the job. It is. And anyone who's worked it knows that. And yeah. So I had been considering quitting this job for at least an entire year. A whole year thinking about flip-flopping about quitting this job. And, at first I was just trying to find a way to make it work. I was like, I know I can troubleshoot this. I can find a way to set proper boundaries. I reached out to people who I work with who've done it to figure out like tips. How can I do this? How can I figure out a way to like keep living my life and not be so depleted? I cut back as much as possible in my personal life in order to support myself. And I obviously sat down with my manager and talked about like how I couldn't do this forever and I needed a way out, But ultimately, no matter how hard I tried to find a way to make this work, it just wasn't going to work for me. And in the end, I knew that I couldn't live truly and authentically if something didn't change. So in the year that I was considering quitting, I kept receiving messages that it wasn't yet time. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. It's not time yet. It was so frustrating, you guys. And it really taught me that like my timing is not the same as God's timing. And I think I've been taught that message a lot of times, but I just kept receiving signs and messages that I had to just like keep going, keep pushing through. And, now that I'm on the other side of that, I can see that like a plan was beginning to take shape. And a major shift was working its way into my life, and I had to be patient. And I didn't know what that was. And eventually, probably around November 2024, Spirit started to show me that the time was now, that it was time for me to quit my job. And for those of you who are considering leaving something, quitting something, I did an episode on this, episode 19, When to Leave, I think it's called. You can go back and listen to that for some tips. But yeah, I was getting all these signs that it was time. So I was like, okay, I settled on a date. It's like, I'm going to give my notice on January 6th, 2025. And my last day will be January 17th. And I was like really dead set on this date, preparing myself for this date, building strength for this date. But God had a different plan in mind. And early in December, I was starting to receive all these signs that it would be better if I gave them more than a month's notice. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to have that conversation yet. I didn't want to be talking about this for a month. I didn't want any of that. So I fought against it. But then when I really sat with my heart, I knew that it was much more in my integrity to give them that kind of notice and essentially get myself replaced before I left the job. So I gathered my strength and I walked into my VP's office and I spilled the beans. And I was so scared. I was praying to my angels. I had so much support going in there. And then of course, she was very surprised. And then she offered me the world in order to stay. And I was prepared for her to offer me, money or things like that. And I was prepared to say no to that because that is not what I needed. But I was not prepared for the amount of opportunity that she offered me, which I'm very grateful for. And so I had to take a week and I had to sit with that. So I had to, and as in sitting with that, I came to the realization that no, this job is not for me. It's time for me to move on. So I had to re-quit. Not just quit once, quit twice. Yeah, and guys, it took an incredible amount of courage for me. And I know this isn't the case for everyone. Some people just quit jobs like no problem. But I think for me, why was it so hard? One, because I'm a Taurus and I stick to things and I really like creative roots and relationships and a name for myself and all that type of thing. But I think the bigger reason why it was difficult to quit was because I was quitting without having something soft to land on the other side. I didn't have a sure thing on the other side of quitting. I have a dream. I have a hope. But I'm making a leap, a big leap. There's nothing certain that I've jumped into. And I have some savings. So that made it incredibly difficult. And not to mention when someone is really trying to keep you and you sort of have to keep going against their sort of resistance for you to leave. But that day after I re-quit the second time, I left work and I cried. And when I asked myself, where are these tears coming from? It wasn't because I was sad to leave the job. It was because I just felt so proud of myself. I just felt so proud of myself for having the courage to leave something that was so out of alignment. And, it was really bothering me that I come on this podcast and I help people do the work and I help one-on-one clients. And yet I was living out of integrity in a way because so much of my life was dedicated to something that wasn't making me happy, something that was stealing my peace, and I was letting it. And so I feel a lot of pride for being able to do that, for being able to leave something that is steady, a well-paid job, and, they were offering me career progression. But we have to do hard things to follow our hearts, don't we? So we will obviously talk about that. So for my own selfish reasons to process leaving this job and this career as a geologist, I just want to talk about some things that I am thankful for from the job. And also because I was really divinely led to this job downtown. I remember I was working in the field at the time and it sort of came into my life. I wasn't looking for it and I was receiving all the signs from the universe to move ahead, even though intuitively I could feel that it was going to be hard. And you might be thinking how were you divinely led to something that was hard and out of alignment? But sometimes, God wants us to step on a stone that is taking us towards our aligned path, our highest and greatest good. But that step might not all be like rainbows and butterflies, right? So that's really what this job was for me. So I want to take a minute and say that I'm thankful for this job teaching me my limit. Because that's what I really think the biggest lesson of all that I learned and that it led me to and why God wanted me to take this job was because it pushed me to the edge. It pushed me to a place where I can no longer do it anymore. And I'm willing to risk whatever the income, the identity that I associated with it for my happiness, for my peace. Like it has made those things more important because it pushed me to my limit. Whereas the job I was doing before in the field, I probably would have done that forever. It was good enough. I was happy enough. But God has bigger plans for me. And it took like me being miserable enough in this job to take me to the edge where I would actually leave and do something bigger and different. I want to thank this job for reinforcing the concept that whatever you're not changing, you are choosing. So this came up for me a lot. Like I had to remind myself that this was a choice and I was staying and it was my choice and not to, hold that against anyone. I want to thank the job for teaching me patience because as I mentioned, there were I was thinking about leaving this job for a year. And along the way, I just kept getting signs that it wasn't quite yet time. It wasn't yet time. Keep going. So I really had to learn patience and that my timing isn't always God's timing. I want to thank this job for showing me the value of my energy, both to others and to myself. This was really clear to me on the way out because I thought I was just going to like quit and sneak out the back door, But as people started to find out, I received so much love, praise, celebration, appreciation from people that I had no idea that I was impacting. And that was like very special and overwhelming. It was really overwhelming because I wasn't expecting it, but it really showed me the value of my energy. And while I was doing the job, my energy was so strained at all times that it taught me like how valuable it was to me to save whatever I had left, at the end of the day. And that meant saying no to a lot more things than I usually would have. I want to thank this job for helping me build confidence. It really showed me that my gifts go far beyond my technical skills as a geologist. And that is something that I will carry forward with me into whatever I do in this life. This job, I want to thank it for devaluing things like money, status, powerful career. And not to say that it's wrong to value those things, but for me, when how do I say this? It devalued them because at the point I'm at now, all I want is peace and happiness and joy. And it's like, I don't want to say I don't care about money, but money does not rank higher than my peace and my joy. It does not. And this job really like solidified that for me. I want to thank this job for the people. People are always it, aren't they? And, there were a small handful that I felt like I could share all of myself with, both my geologist side and my spiritual side. And that really like kept me alive. And it also just showed me that I'd like to live a life where I can share all of myself in my work. I'd like to share and integrate all of who I am into my whole day. I don't want to live like two separate lives anymore. I thought that was just a normal way to live, but it doesn't feel right anymore. And finally, just a fun one. I want to thank this job for the fashion because it was super fun to get dressed every day. As you all know, I love a good look. Okay, so that's my quitting my job story. Thanks for listening. And now let's talk about doing hard things. That was one hard thing that I've had to do as of late. But we all have to do hard things at different times, right? Sometimes we choose to do those hard things. Sometimes we are thrust into hard things. And what's hard for me may not be hard for you. So maybe you're like, my gosh, she really put a lot of energy into quitting her job. It's no big deal. And that's probably true for you. But everyone's hard is different, So maybe it's moving. Maybe it's setting a boundary with a parent. Maybe it's maybe moving on from a friendship. Maybe it's leaving a relationship. I don't know what your hard thing is, but we all have them. So let's talk about them. And okay, so how do you know what your hard thing is? I mean, you probably know, but It's probably something that you're procrastinating on or have been procrastinating on for a while. And it's probably something that that you like avoid thinking about because it scares you, the reality of it. And it might be something that you feel guilty about because you haven't done it. And you probably, I'm willing to bet you have many blocks around this hard thing because that's why you're not doing it, or a big part of why you're not doing it. And so you probably find yourself flip-flopping about what the right thing to do is. So why is it important that we do hard things? So many reasons. And I'll talk about a few of them here. I've got 7 reasons, but there are probably many more. And honestly, this is probably really intuitive to you. You're like, yeah, I know it's important to do hard things. But let's just outline why. So 1, the payout of doing a hard thing is huge, right? If you feel called to do something and then you do it, on the other side is a happier and more aligned life. What bigger payout is there? And generally, the comfortable or settling life is the life for the ego, because the ego just wants to keep you safe. Whereas the life on the other side of doing the hard thing is the life for your soul, the soul-led life. And just know that when you do the hard thing, you will be supported on the other side. Okay, second reason why it's important we do hard things is to build trust. Both trust in yourself, because you trusted yourself to know that that was something that you needed to do and then you did it. It also helps you build trust with God and the universe, because there's sort of like you're in a co-creation mode when you are preparing to do the hard thing. Third reason why it's important to do hard things is to build strength. So you get stronger every time you do a hard thing, right? And that strength that you build is there for you for so many other things that you will need strength for. Because like I said, sometimes we choose to do hard things, and other times hard things are thrust upon us. And if you have strength there to hold you, that is everything you need. Okay, fourth reason why it's important to do hard things is for healing, both for yourself and your lineage. So when you're doing a hard thing, generally there's going to be some healing you need to do because it's hard for that reason, you know. But also, generally you are healing your lineage. And what I mean by lineage is your parents and those that came before them. So the reason that this thing is hard is probably because you've not seen it done before, or you weren't taught to do this thing. That's why it's hard. So by you doing it, you're healing that line, and you are healing, your children's line and what's to come. Fifth reason why it's important to do hard things is to inspire others. The ripple effect of you doing something hard is huge. You probably don't know it because not everybody says the words, "You've inspired me to XYZ," but people are inspired by what they see, what they feel, what's going on around them. So there's this huge ripple effect. So ultimately, by you doing hard things to live more in alignment, you are raising the collective's experience of living more in alignment. Another reason to do hard things is that if you don't, you're probably going to be feeling like a victim to the world around you. That don't feel so good. So by doing hard things, you empower yourself. Not doing hard things, victim. Do hard things, empowered. Okay, and finally, a good reason to do hard things is that the more hard things you do, the stronger you get, the more resilience you build, and the higher levels that you reach. And not everybody wants to go reach some super high level, but I'm going to imagine that most of the Spirit Club listeners do. So the higher level that you want to reach is going to require you to do harder and harder things. And what used to be hard will no longer feel hard anymore. You know what I mean? So those are some reasons why we want to do hard things. Now let's talk about what I know you want to hear, which is how. Help me, how do I do hard things? And, at Spirit Club, I like to make things practical, but the how, I'm going to lay it out in steps as though it's linear, but it is not. And it's going to be sort of more of an organic process that unrolls. But I think if you do these things, or at least some of these things, it will take you towards and overcoming doing this hard thing. Okay? So first step is I want you all to think about something hard that you know you need to do. Admit that to yourself. Don't worry. You're just admitting it to yourself for now. I know it's scary to even say it to yourself, but it's just you and it's private. So just think of the thing that you know you need to do and admit that to yourself. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to spend some time with this idea. And you're going to do that by what I call trying it on. So I've given you this as an exercise in another podcast. I think it was the podcast on when it's time to leave. Similar concept here. So how do we try it on? Well, we just daydream. We just imagine what it would be like if we did this hard thing. Just live out the story. And essentially you are normalizing it for yourself. You're making it a little less scary. And again, it's all just happening inside you. So you can kind of I don't want to say lie to yourself, but you can kind of trick your ego by just being like, well, I'm just daydreaming. Nothing's actually happening. So as you do this, fears are going to come up. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to name your fears. Just write them down, or you could say them to someone you trust. Name your fears. And a lot of your fears, just by naming them, talking about them, writing about them, it will dissolve the fear. It won't be so potent, it won't be so strong. But for the fears that linger, that are really holding on to you, those are the ones that you go and you do some unblocking work on, because those are deeper and they need a little more digging in order to diffuse. Alongside all of this, you are going to work on building strength and confidence. So not necessarily strength and confidence in this particular thing you're trying to do, just general strength and confidence. So how do we do that? There are so many ways, and I could probably make an episode on this, but to give you some examples, you could go work out more, or take special care in what you're eating. That will likely result in more confidence. It could be spending time with people who make you feel good about yourself. Just every time you hang out with them, you're like, I feel inspired. And that ultimately is giving you strength. It could be, for some of you, rather than spending time with other people, it might be more about spending time alone, carving out alone time to meditate, time to be with your inner strength. And it could be something let's say you have this list of things you've needed to do, go do them. Just random to-do lists, go get that done. That will build some strength and confidence. So there are lots of ways you can do this. And I'm sure you can think of one that works for you. But this is sort of something that you're doing on the side, but ultimately gives you more strength to go do the hard thing. And just know, so as you all do this, like I said, it's not linear. So it's all going to be sort of happening on top of itself, around itself. And the remaining steps will sort of unroll before you. And as you're doing this work to do the hard things, God will be working with you. Look around, watch for the signs, listen, because God wants you to move towards your aligned path, move towards what's best for you, what you know to be best for you. And so there is support there and signs and ways to work with the universe. Okay, that's it for now. I'm sending you all the strength that you need to do hard shit. And thank you for listening to my story around doing hard things lately. Until next time.